We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Swedish author Fredrik Backman once wrote, "Everyone has 1,000 wishes before a tragedy, but just one afterward." This seems poignant in the wake of the unfolding tragedy of Afghanistan. What would have been done, what should have been done, and perhaps most importantly, what wasn't done. America faces a long night of the soul like few in recent history. But will she emerge from the ashes of Kabul stronger and more resilient? Or does this episode harken the end of the United States' power on the world stage? Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, right here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and we have quite the lineup for you today. We're joined by Jeff Charles to discuss the precipitous plummeting of President Biden's approval ratings and why the media seem to have turned their back on Lunch Bucket Joe. Also, we're going to delve deep into the China connection with Dave Patterson. How did the Great Dragon manage to maneuver itself into such a position of power with the Taliban, all while the Biden administration was left floundering in the dust? Scott Cosenza is joining in for Talking Liberty to examine the latest issues that impact your rights and freedoms. We'll be sitting down with conservative powerhouse and syndicated columnist Cal Thomas to get to the heart of the matter on Afghanistan and what it means for America going forward. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com. That's where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and you get a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Now, it's a big show this week on the Radio America Network. We're going to be looking for answers rather than asking the same old tired questions. We have a stunning range of guests to help provide us those answers, so it's time for some truth. When one nation has a crisis, others may see opportunity. And this is exactly what's happened with the Great Dragon, China. As the United States is chased out of Afghanistan, China is setting up its pipe and slippers, as you might say, for the long haul. What does this mean for the three nations involved? Well, to help us answer this and figure out the odds, we're joined by retired Air Force pilot and former Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller, Mr. Dave Patterson. Welcome on board, Dave.
Mark, it's great to be with you.
Thanks ever so much. Now, let's start with the most simple question. How did China manage to maneuver itself into this enviable position, and what gains is Beijing hoping to make?
Well, I think that Beijing is actually attempting to do perhaps three things. First, the Belt and Road Initiative for global circling and being pretty much the biggest power militarily and economically in the world would benefit from exploiting Afghan resources, and I think that's part of it. Secondly, I think despite what it looks like, the Taliban are terrorists. One commentator said savages in sandals, but nonetheless terrorists, mercurial, and they can turn on the Chinese over the slightest perceived insult. And I think that lastly, the Taliban is a failed state, regardless of what it may look like right now, and it's a clean sheet of paper for the Chinese. But that assumes, of course, that the PRC can, do something about it.
So how did they get into this position, though, the Chinese? Because as you point out, it's a failed state, but a failed state is one that's ripe with opportunity for resource exploitation, for, as you say, developing its Belt and Road Initiative, and of course, there's a border issue there as well. So, how did they maneuver this when we have talked about this before? But how did they maneuver this when America failed to?
Well, I think that the Chinese are very patient, and they have simply taken advantage over a period of time, building a relationship with the Taliban. And now that they see that the United States is clearly moving out and has done a pretty feckless, pitiful, incompetent performance in Afghanistan, they see that as an opportunity. But as I said, it comes with a certain amount of caution on their part.
Yeah, when when Joe Biden first began campaigning to become president, a lot of critics pointed out that he would be soft on China, none more so than President Donald Trump, who said, I believe he coined the nickname Beijing Biden. And so when compared to Trump, how does the Chinese government see the US-Sino relations in the wake of the Afghan disaster?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's fairly clear that Beijing does not hold the Biden administration in much regard. I mean, we saw that in their first meeting in Anchorage. And I think that China believes they have the geopolitical high ground, especially, during this, as I said, pitiful performance of the United States in Afghanistan.
So what does this mean for Taiwan?
Well, as much as I hate to promote global news, the Communist China Party propaganda arm, there's some value in what they say, and that it does give you some clues to what they're thinking. And when it disparages Biden's leadership and it openly threatens Taiwan, there's a message there. And that said, no one should be confused. I think that for as much disregard as the CCP may have for Biden and his national security team leadership, there's no lack of respect, on the other hand, for the United States Navy and its presence in the South China Sea.
Yeah, I'd agree there. Now, for China, getting in on the ground level with with the Taliban leadership, it's a major win. This is a nation, as we talked about, it's rich in natural resources. It has little clue how to run what we'd call a modern state. And at the moment, its wealth is tied up or frozen by the United States and the IMF. Now, surely all these factors are giving Xi Jinping a lot more leverage than he would normally have. How does the US react to this?
Well, I think the United States is not in a very good position to react one way or the other. I think that the attention is so focused on the precipitous withdrawal from Afghanistan and the mess that's caused, that it's not clear to me that the United States national security team has any focus on that at all. And they're going to, when the dust is settled, come back and find that the Chinese are well ensconced in Afghanistan for good or bad, but nonetheless, they'll be there. And their presence there is a problem.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that there would be some issues, potential issues on the ground there. Internally, China shares a border with Afghanistan. It's around 50 or 60 miles worth. I think 57. But as has been widely reported, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, it has quite the issue with its own Muslim population. Do you think that down the line this could become a flashpoint?
Absolutely. I think that the mullahs in Afghanistan and the religious leaders in the Taliban are going to, at some point, take issue with the fact that the Uyghurs are being persecuted. And it's unlikely that Beijing will change its position regarding the suppression of the Uyghurs, in as much as they see them as terrorists. And that becomes a problem.
Dave, final question, if I may. How does Joe Biden effectively tackle this upset in let's call it the balance of power? If China allies itself with Afghan, then it seems that any interference with Afghanistan will be seen as interference with Chinese overseas affairs.
Well, I believe that China probably doesn't see the Taliban as an ally, but more of a geopolitical tool. But the way in which the Biden administration would be more successful is simply to focus on the South China Sea, the Indo-Pacific, and build up our forces there in a way that show the Chinese that any adventurism on their part will be dealt with and severely. And it probably isn't worth it for them to do that in the meantime.
Dave, I think many people would question whether Joe Biden would have the appetite for that kind of thing. But I do thank you so much, so very sincerely, for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark. Always good to be with you.
Now, don't go anywhere. Later in the show, we'll be speaking with one-man conservative dynamo Cal Thomas about what happens to America when the dust finally settles on the Afghan debacle, and whether America can really make a comeback. But coming up after this short break, we'll be speaking with Jeff Charles on the ever-decreasing popularity of President Joe Biden. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.